Hey Lissy.
Hey Jazzy.
How are you?
I'm good. I've had a really manic week, but I'm good.
In what way?
Just work has been crazy and I think I overbooked myself a bit too much this week. Hence the raspy voice.
I feel like there's a really fine line between, and we've spoken about this so many times, about doing things you want to do and then not letting people down. But then also this idea of being like, oh, I just want to enjoy every moment. And
yeah,
I think it's really hard when people say like, take life by the horns and like do everything you can, because also I think there's a level to it.
Yeah.
And then there's that other side of being, I've heard this a lot recently about protecting your energy and like making sure you only do things you want to do. And what do you think about that? Because I find, do you think that because I think protecting your energy can sometimes just become selfish.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that either way, you're kind of like doomed if you are and doomed if you're not. Is that the saying? Doomed if you are and doomed if you're not?
It's actually damned.
I agree. I think there's a fine line, but I think we've touched on this a lot before. I think it's really hard to feel like you're doing well at work, doing well in your social life, hitting the targets that you want to hit. I think is actually virtually impossible. And this week, I tried to do all of them, like go to gym classes every day, tried to see all my friends, and then work was just a killer. So then I've now got to the end and was like, okay, that was too much.
Yeah.
How was your week?
Mine was good. Mine feels like an absolute blur because I feel like I've done two like socially things. We went to the football on Tuesday.
God, that was crazy, guys.
I know. We've said this before. We're big Arsenal fans, but they won 4-0. It was a Champions League game. They did a light show.
The light show.
Which was kind of the weirdest part, to be honest.
The light show was so bizarre. They did it to...
it was like
is that
Big for Your Boots
song?
Stormzy, wasn't it?
It was so weird.
It was kind of an odd song to have.
Can I say, no offense, Arsenal, it was kind of lame, but it was also cool. It was just like, you knew the marketing team was sat behind being like, we killed this.
We've nailed it. But also the only thing that they didn't quite perhaps get right was that in the Emirates, or actually to be honest, any big like stadium or where there's like thousands of people, your service just doesn't work.
Yes.
So you couldn't download the app, and it was like 10 seconds to download the app, and it was like, what? I was like, my data's not working.
Can I tell you a really embarrassing story that happened on the way to football?
Tell me.
Oh, okay. Embarrassment is a choice, and I stand by this, but This was embarrassing. All the trains were fucked this week, especially the Northern Line, so it meant that like the overground was just rammed. And I was going to go all the way to Highbury and Islington and then walk to Emirates because that's, for me, the closest way. Anyway, I was on this packed overground. We were like sardines, and I realised I was stood quite far away from any like pole.
Yeah.
So then like we're pulling into Canonbury and I'm starting to panic because I'm like, oh my God, well, I know this train's going to stop and I'm going to just fall on all these people. So when the train starts to like really slow down, I just in my periphery, I'm like, that's an orange pole, I can grab for that. So we're slowing down, we're nearly stopping. I reach and I grab. And then I realise that I'm holding a man's hand. Give me your hand. I'm holding his hand like this. So he goes, and this was weirder from him, he goes, oh. So I turn around and I'm like, oh. And our eyes meet. And the worst part about it was that he was my age. I don't know why. If he'd been like an old man, I would have been like, oh sorry, love. But he was my age. So we looked each other in the eye and I was like, is this a meet cute? Obviously it was not a meet cute. I was like, oh my God, this is so awkward. And so I just ran off the train and had to walk about 24 minutes to get to the stadium because I was just so embarrassed. And everyone looked at us and was like, ew.
Oh God, that's an ick.
I haven't really recovered from it yet. It was just the way that we were holding each other's hands so intensely, and he must have been like, what is happening?
Mate, it's so weird when stuff like that happens because it's like always in a flash second.
Yeah.
And then obviously it is funny for me to hear, but I also don't know the situation. And I also think that you then look back and you explain it to people and everyone's just like, cool man, that's totally cool.
Yeah, it doesn't seem now like it was that awkward.
No, I know.
When you're on public transport in London and no one's talking, and then you give like people a reason to think about look at something because everyone's like so bored in their life and they're like, oh, something's happening. Like this man is whimpering. Why did he whimper? Why did you whimper? I don't know why, but there was something in his eyes when I looked at him that was like hopeful. Like someone's holding my hand. No one's maybe held his hand for a while.
Maybe, do you know what? Maybe you made his day. Maybe if you see this man again, maybe his destiny. Sorry, Ed, but maybe Liz has found her new life partner.
We were meant to be together.
Oh, that's really funny.
Oh God, poor guy.
I hate stuff like that.
I know, it was pretty tragic.
God, well, I'm glad that the week has been on the up since then.
It's been on the up. And I do stand by the fact that you can choose to not be embarrassed by things, but in that moment, yeah, I was just feeling pretty damn bad about it.
Also, is embarrassment, because how can you define embarrassment? Because you can't, it's like human nature to become embarrassed by things. Or do you not think it is? Do you think it's learnt behaviour?
I think it's learnt behaviour but then I thought this, dogs do get embarrassed.
I was about to say that dogs get embarrassed.
Yeah, and your dog, Casper, he gets weirded out by things.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you do something that made him feel embarrassing, he'll look around like...
Yeah, he doesn't really know what to do. And also, Springer Spaniels especially have, if anyone knows like their dog breed, they have this thing where they really utilise the side eye. So he'll be looking at you. Well, he's not looking at you, but he's kind of like checking you out in a side eye. And it's almost like he'll sit away like this and like side eye you. And you're like, what are you thinking?
He's judging you, basically.
He is. I read this. I don't know whether half the stuff, I mean, I'm sure I sound like an absolute idiot. Half of the stuff I see on social media is bullshit. But I do follow this really cute dog account, which basically talks about dog psychology. And it says that, I read it this week, and it's like, your dogs have feelings. Like, basically, they know that dogs have... obviously we know that dogs get stressed, but I think by researching cortisol levels and serotonin levels, they've worked out that dogs do have quite ingrained thoughts around anxiety, happiness, like all of these things. And apparently I read this article this week that's like, your dog lays awake at night thinking about all the things that they're like anxious or kind of annoyed about. And I'm like, things like when you leave without saying bye. But then you read with dog trainers, you should never say bye to your dog, because it then creates this kind of anxiety around leaving. So I try to leave, but my Sam is the fucking worst with our dog, because he'll get home and let's say I've got Casper to a point where he's pretty chill, we're on the sofa, Sam will open the front door by a centimetre, because Casper will be right there looking at him, and then he'll look at Casper will look at him, and this goes on for I'd say a good minute, for example. And then Sam will shut the door and then reopen and come in Rah! And then Casper just thinks it's a game, and then goes mental, starts ripping stuff, and yeah, it's so intense.
I kind of feel like that's what our dad used to do when he'd come home from work, because
to us. Yeah
because our poor mum had to take care of 4 kids, and obviously getting us settled in the evening and making us all calm, ready for bedtime. And then our dad would get home from work and we'd all be
yeah,
so excited.
Crazy.
And then he's like, yay, I get to have a bit of fun with them now. And my mum's probably just like, oh my God.
Yeah, literally, fuck off. I just want to chill. God, funny. But we probably need to get into today's episode of dogs. What else are we talking about? We're talking about today kind of typecasts and that feeling of being boxed in. This could be metaphorically, or it could maybe be physically. That idea of kind of being boxed into a persona, or what people think that you are as a persona, maybe a personality, or a type of person that you might enjoy. Let's say you enjoy doing something as a child, doesn't always mean that you're necessarily going to do that for your whole adult life. So I kind of want to start off by asking you if you've ever felt boxed in or typecast as a person.
Yes, I think quite a lot. And I think that this is a stereotype that I don't really define myself with anymore. But I think both of us, when we were younger, were maybe slightly devious or naughty, or a bit crazy, not even crazy. Disruptive, yeah. Maybe. I think that we both could sometimes get labelled like that. And then over time, you start to either play into the stereotype and act up to it, or just feel that everyone has already sort of like predetermined that for you.
So much. And I do think that's something that's definitely, well, it's so started at school, isn't it? It's like you can actually even see it at school. It's
what, with
like
teachers as well?
Yeah,
and
with
stuff,
teachers,
yeah.
like I'm exactly the same as you. I was a very disruptive child, but we've spoken about this so many times on the podcast. Like I now am diagnosed with ADHD, but I know as a child I would have had it, and it wasn't as spoken about when we were younger. And you kind of, if you had ADHD as a child, you were literally like, let's say, bouncing off the walls, which I kind of was, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I can't believe I wasn't diagnosed. But similar to you, you're labelled by teachers as disruptive and naughty, and you almost like, it's almost at school, because you get the laughs and you live off those like laughs from your peers and like that kind of like always pushing. You almost are like, well, I've gone this far now, like fuck it, I might as well just be badly behaved because I am the disruptive one.
Yeah, 100%. You just play up to it so much. And then I think actually you get to a point where you feel quite anxious because you don't really know how to like play another role.
Yeah.
And then you might not align. Like I definitely felt like this kind of throughout my whole like teenage years, kind of felt like that person was maybe often the person in my group to try some things first that other people were a bit more anxious about. And then now I'm at an age where like I just want to be like an old grandma.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you almost have to kind of backtrack a little bit and then rebrand yourself. And actually that's one, just taking it back to school, because we were obviously both quite badly behaved in our younger years at school, but I do then feel both of us, like for example, at our school, unless you got a certain amount of GCSEs, like between A and C, you weren't able to get into the last 2 years of school for sixth form. And I, like for the last 6 months of my GCSEs was like, fuck, this is actually quite real now. And like did actually put the pressure on myself and actually ended up getting quite good GCSEs.
Yeah.
And then kind of went into sixth form, having done quite well in my GCSEs, maybe shocked the teachers. But then I felt like I spent probably like the first year of lower sixth trying to convince my teachers that I wasn't the person that I was when I was younger. And I do think you go through a big transition, kind of those later years of teenagers between the age of perhaps 16 to 18, because you are coming into an adult. You are then being told by teachers that you need to start thinking about what you want to do in your life, and maybe like it starts to become a bit more pressured.
Yeah.
But you almost have to try to convince people, your peers and your teachers, and to be like, no, I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah, I think, like, again, sticking with school and learning and stuff, the hardest, like, typecast that I've actually had to really work so hard to get myself away from is that I'm not very clever.
Yeah.
And I think
Same.
it's the toughest one, and I still really struggle with it now. But when I got to uni, I really, because I've got quite a lot of learning difficulties. I really struggle with processing, and I know that I'm switched on, but I just struggle so much with understanding things. And I have the type of dyslexia where I just can't spell or write very well, so everything's very jumbled and it's really confusing. But it's fine, I manage. It's just hard. And I remember in school, I felt like I got to a point where I was quite confident about it, because I wouldn't say I had a particularly like academic year, so I felt like I was okay. And then I remember I got to uni because I went to Leeds, and I just remember thinking, oh my God, I'm definitely the most stupid one out of all my friends. Like, this is hard. I felt like I couldn't really get involved with certain debates. Like, I didn't really know what I was adding to conversations sometimes. And it's definitely no fault of my friends, because they were all amazing at like supporting me through. But I think because I took the piss out of myself, it kind of became this thing like, oh, Liz can sometimes be a bit
Yeah.
like not dumb. I don't know how to explain it. And it wasn't their fault. It was my fault, and I was feeding into all these feelings. But I had so many breakdowns at uni just because I was like, I'm so stupid. I don't think I'm ever going to know what it feels like to be smart. And now I feel really happy because I've honed in on what my skills are, which is being a really sociable person who's like good at reading things and situations. And I'm glad I've got that, because I'm never going to be academic, and I'm never going to be able to read Shakespeare, and I'm never going to be able to watch QI and understand it. Is it called QI with Stephen Fry? Is that what it's called?
I think so. I'm not sure. But you've also just made me think about like the definition of intelligence and like being academic, let's say, because this falls into so many pots. And I think this is unfortunately why, well, I personally have a lot of kind of, I have issues with the schooling system in the UK, because I feel like unless, for example, Sam, my husband, is a very academic person. He's really good at maths. He is able to retain quite a lot of information easily, and he was really good at exams. And like he's told me many a times, and he'd sit here and say the same thing, that he was disruptive and badly behaved at school, but because he was able to retain quite a lot of information and carry himself very well through exams, and was quite good at structure and sitting down and actually just learning stuff for exams, he then excelled in kind of that element of school. Whereas I really love writing, for example. So,
and you're really good at it too.
And I really like it. And I then excelled at school in things like coursework. So if school was more structured around coursework, for example, I would have done far better in my exams. But because it's all about exams and sitting down and retaining information, we know one of the biggest parts of having attention deficit is that you really struggle to maintain concentration for long periods of time. So sitting down to revise for 3 hours is just not something that would work well for me.
It's really tough as well, because I think that the language, and I bet again, teachers like are incredible and do so much, and absolutely amazing, and I've got so much respect for it, because it must be one of the hardest jobs in the world. But there's certain teachers, and perhaps at our school was more of the old school ones. It's the language they use around people that struggle that way. And it makes you feel, and I hope it's different now, but it makes you feel like you will never get it. And it's not that they're not hopeful for you, because it's just the way that they use the language. Like, I remember this fucking guy. I had a geography teacher. I'm not going to name him, but he was very misogynistic. He was an old school guy. The boys thought he was hilarious. He wasn't. And I loved geography. It was my favourite subject ever. I thought it was so fascinating. And in the geography lesson, he would say to me, okay, who's going to answer? Not Melissa, she'll find this one too hard. And I would literally be like, oh my God, you're such a dick. And all the boys are there like, she's going to find that one too hard. And he would go on like that for the whole year, and then say, only joking. And it beat my confidence down so much, to the point where I didn't even like geography that much anymore, because I was like, I'm just not good at this. And so it's so important, the language you use around people that do struggle that way, because exactly like you just said, it was really stupid of me to presume that intelligence for all these years has just been one thing, about being that academic, that STEM sort of person. That's not me. I'll never be me. But again, I know that we're all intelligent in our own way, and there's just not one way to be clever, to say.
No, and there's so many elements, there's so many things that you'll know that many people won't know, and vice versa, and things like some
like all
people,
the characters of Real House Beverly Hills.
Exactly. And it's like, I also think that as you go through life, you realise that there are so many different people, and there are many people that would honestly quake in their boots to have to sit on a sofa and be recorded and have a conversation on a podcast. And then there will be many people that, find it really easy to go and watch a ballet for 3 hours. Not me. That was a really bad example, but you know what I mean. I also think, and there'll be people also, it comes down to passion. I also think, like, for example, our dad loves history, and he is a real history buff, and we went away in the summer, all of us, and I don't think you know this, Sam and I and my dad were all in a conversation, and my dad was talking about a moment in history, and the way he was explaining it, I could not believe some of the information he knew. Like, I was like...
Were you there?
Yeah, honestly, it was crazy. It was like down to like... the exact date, but like real specifics.
But I think he's got a photographic memory.
He does, but I also think because he's so interested in it and he's so passionate about it, it carries a confidence, and it's the way he's able to kind of articulate himself around it. It's like someone that is really interested in plane spotting, for example. Like, you know, it's not because they're an expert in, like, well, they are now, but if you're passionate about something, you will make it kind of every element of your life to learn about it and to know more. And it's like when I became a personal trainer, for example, I couldn't understand how I would ever get to a point where I would be able to, like, do a really good program, for example. But because I've now been doing it for nearly 10 years and I'm passionate about it and I understand how the human body works and how how to move and all of these things, and I want to help people, I'm not saying that I always find it easy, but if you were to ask me questions, I most of the time would know the answers or what I think is the right thing to do. Honestly, 10 years ago, if you'd asked me that, I would have been like, oh God, panic, I'm stupid, I can't retain the information. And I even remember when I was becoming a personal trainer, you have to do quite a lot of anatomy and physiology. And I used to think, again, like you, I thought I was so stupid. I didn't understand, like, the attachments on the human body. I didn't understand where particular muscles were. And then I also think when you start to work with real people, and I have had a lot of injuries over the last 10 years, and therefore it's become quite personal to me to understand where these things are. Then when you actually look at it and you step back, you're like, oh, it makes sense because I can now relate that to that. And I think there's so many elements of things that you're like, I just don't get it, I'm stupid. But it's because, let's take a maths, for example, at school, I had dyscalculia, which is to do with sequencing. So a bit like dyslexia, but kind of more on the math side. I genuinely took about 3 years to pass my maths GCSE. I did it in A level. So I was still doing GCSE when Georgie, our sister, was doing her GCSE maths, and I'm 3 years older than her. And I honestly hated it. I thought I was so stupid. I now run a business, and I obviously every day nearly need to use maths in some form. But because it now relates to my everyday life and what I actually have to do, obviously the main things I need to know is percentages and adding and subtracting and all those things. Genuinely, I can do a lot of it in my head now because it's like something that I need to use and I understand it relates to me. But when you're reading a maths question and you're like, some of them were so stupid, like if Jenny goes to the shop.
I was going to say Jenny, that is so weird.
That's really weird.
I wonder why we went for Jenny.
Who's Jenny?
Well, she would have come up.
Jenny. Wait, what's that song? Jenny, don't be hasty. I love Paolo Nutini. What a song.
Legend.
Another thing about typecasting that I kind of wanted to ask is, so basically when you've decided, but let's say you're going through kind of a transition between two kind of like types of people in your life, or maybe when you're moving from one to the next, do you think that your friends and family make this harder? Because perhaps they have an idea of you and it's the evolution of you perhaps going from one typecast maybe to another, or just to changing?
I do think so, that we all probably make it a bit harder on each other in that way. But I think if we're being more honest, it's the voice in your head, and it's the way that you've positioned yourself. Yes, and then it's also the external pressure of family and friends, which you've probably created as well. Yeah. Because I think everyone is really comfortable with you going on your own path. I think the only time when people don't like you changing is when it spotlights them. Yeah. So if you felt like you were moving on. But I think in terms of phases, actually, can I retract what I've just said? Yeah. Because I do think it takes people a while. Like, I still think our dad has an idea of me that I wouldn't align myself with. Like, he might be like, Melissa, you're so like this. Yeah. Or I know what you're like. And it's like, no, I'm actually not like that anymore. Yeah. I promise. But maybe it's just because they remember your childhood ways so much, and it's so ingrained in how they see you. And realistically, when our parents see us, we probably think they see us as this like mature 31-year-old. But I saw this really sad thing the other day. It's like your dad still just sees you as a little girl, like sitting at the table. Yeah. And they probably do look at you, and it might be hard to come to terms with the fact that you've phased out of that thing that they so resonate with you, And it may even be in quite a nostalgic way that they don't want to let go of that version of you.
Yeah, it's so true. And I also think that it can almost be like a form of grieving, almost in like a very like metaphorical sense, that you might kind of like have lost a version of a person that you maybe liked more or maybe disliked more completely. But it might just be that it's like it's very strange when you do see someone go through a change, or they change from someone that you really thought they were to someone completely different. I also think, just from a completely random takeaway, our own personal typecasting and family and friends, I think it's really hard for actors and musicians with this, because you see this all the time historically. You know, I've actually heard Matthew McConaughey talk about this so many times. About this idea that he was always the rom-com guy, and like, you know, he was on an interview recently, and he said that he's spoken about this publicly loads of times, that he turned down a massive box office fee job. I don't know what the film was or who got it in the end, because he was going through this transition period of deciding that he no longer wanted to be the rom-com guy, and he was like, I need to start making more serious films. And I'm pretty sure the next film he made was Dallas Buyers Club, which I think he got an Oscar for. So I think
I've got a good example of this as well, actually. This is a bit more niche, a bit random, but do you remember in lockdown when TikTok came about and there was a girl called Addison Rae?
No.
Okay, this might be more of for my Gen Zers out there. She basically just made loads of TikTok videos. Like, there was a group of people like Charlie D'Amelio, Addison Rae. They were quite young, probably my age, they were like 18, 19 at the time. And they were quite, you know, they were just dancing videos. It was all quite popular in lockdown. I'm not really sure why. I think people were just bored and started doing weird things. And it was this weird style of dancing where it wasn't really anything. It was just like, I don't know how to explain it.
The TikTok dancing.
Know the TikTok dancing. And then she was very much labelled this like immature TikTok dancer girl who people found quite cringe and hard to watch. But also she was hot and beautiful, so she had lots of followers. And now she has transitioned into, I would say, like an iconic pop star.
Yeah.
She brought out some really like good songs, and she's kind of gone very like Charlie XCX route, like kind of really played into her Brat era. This more like chaotic version of a girl, like, you see, I'm hot, I smoke, I drink Diet Coke.
Yeah.
And it's actually, I think, really cool for her, and I really rate it, because it must be, particularly like child actors, for example, like Miley Cyrus, she did it and completely like changed her whole life. Like, do you remember the Wrecking Ball?
Yes.
Was it the VMAs?
The VMAs, and she had that big fucking, that was so iconic. She went up with
Robin Thicke, who is now cancelled, I believe.
Yes.
And she just was there shaking that thing, and everyone was like, oh my God, she's no longer a child star. Like, that was her being like, stop associating me with a child. I'm an adult. I do this. I'm provocative. I can be what I want.
Yeah, and I think that's just played out with celebrities because they're in the public eye so much. But if you look at many people's lives, including our own, we all go through those, and we spoke about this in our phases episode, we'll go through many different hats in our life. And I think this kind of like typecast idea of like you're having to be in one box and you're one person can feel very restricting. But I also think that if you're told your whole life you're going to be something, or you're going to be doing this, and then it doesn't happen, that can, let's flip it on its head, that can be so damaging. It's like, you often see it actually in kind of families where historically all of their parents and grandparents have been, let's say, lawyers or doctors, and then there's that extreme pressure that you may put on yourself, that you're going to be this like certain type of person, and you're going to be like really good at. Actually, I'm just thinking of someone. I don't want to say their name because I don't want to, just in case they don't want it to be shared. But I'm thinking of someone that I know very well as well, that was always told at school that, and she is extremely intelligent, but she was told she was going to be X, and she was going to go to Oxford, and you know, all of these things. And she went to a very good university, but she didn't go to the Oxford or the Cambridge. And then I know that throughout life, that's kind of come through in low confidence levels and perhaps not living up to her parents' expectations. And I see that a lot. And whether that's kind of like the idea that, and we kind of spoken about this actually in the phases episode that we last did, about this idea of perhaps you're being pushed into this path, and I felt like this when I moved to London, that I must go into the corporate world, and I'm typecast, now I'm a businesswoman, I'm into this thing, and then actually you're like, hang on a second, I don't want to do this, and I'm panicking, and now I feel stuck.
But with humans in general, we've got an obsession with categorizing people and things, and I don't know if that's just a British thing or if it's like a universal thing, but we are really obsessed with like finding a place for someone and making sure that they stay there. I don't know why we do it, because it's so restrictive, and then the way that we can express ourselves and like do the freedom of then your movements and your thinking can become so restricted by that.
I know, and I think it's this idea that you almost can't change and you can't kind of adapt, and I think it's really important actually, as like, let's say if you're a leader or even if you're a manager at work, or if you're influencing anybody else, I think it's really important to actually acknowledge when you've changed your mind or perhaps pivoted on something, because I think otherwise you can kind of get stuck in this position of being like, that's who I am and that's what I believe, and I think it's really important sometimes to actually be like, no, do you know what, I've actually changed my mind on that, or I don't say that anymore, or I don't do, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think you actually, Chris Williamson, I know we talk about him a lot, but he does sometimes come up with some quite like interesting topics when he's interviewing people. He talks about this period of transition that you might go through. Let's say you could take, we've spoken about this before, so I feel like I did this slightly. I was a real like party girl, quite badly behaved. When I moved to London, drank a lot, did lots of other stuff, you know, was perhaps not in the best mental, like what? Nothing. Was perhaps not in the best mental state. And I was very much surrounded by people that were kind of doing the same thing at the time. And Chris Williamson often talks about this kind of loneliness chapter or loneliness period of your life that you may go through, where you may go from a group of friends or a workplace or a living situation, and you're not quite at the next one yet because you still need to do a little bit of work. And that part in between, that no man's land in between, is the loneliness chapter. And it's like, you could have that in many elements of your life. It could be kind of, I don't know, a struggle with family. It could be moving jobs. And there are periods of life where you maybe kind of felt like you're boxed in or you're typecast into one particular thing, and it could feel like, how the fuck am I going to get out of this one? And there is a certain amount of kind of withdrawance and kind of like, the withdrawal, not withdrawance, that's not a word, withdrawal that one has to go through sometimes in order to get perhaps to that next box. And so I'm saying next box or next step. But it might be an internal feeling, and it's quite hard to explain.
But do you feel like with progression, internal progression, let's say, do you feel like it's as simple as you take one step forward or you take one step and that step is always forward into a more productive, let's not say productive version of you, I don't like that, into a more fulfilled version of you? Because I think that you take one step forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. You find out something about yourself that you want to explore. You go there, it might be wrong, it might have turned out badly, it might not have been the right move for you. Because I think we talk a lot, and a lot of podcasts do this, you know, it's like how to become the best version of yourself. I mean, I'm seeing far too much of it now. I'm finding it, quite frankly, overwhelming. But it's this idea that actually if you just work on yourself, you will fulfill yourself. It's not that simple.
No, because we've also spoken about this before. I think now in this age of kind of like personal growth and making you the best version of yourself, you can lose sight of others. And that's like what I was talking about at the beginning, about this protect your energy idea. And it's like, I've been in periods of my life running my business where I've been like, fuck it, I'm literally going to go all in. All I'm going to do is focus on work. I'm going to make this my identity and my personality, and I just want to work so hard. And then you look up and you've been doing that for 3-4 months, and you realise that half of your friends have had so much shit going on. You haven't asked your parents how they are in 2 months. You know, you've neglected your relationship. And then you're like, hang on a second, you know, stuff at work's going okay, but if I carry on this trajectory, then I'm going to lose sight of my relationships, my friends, my family. And the same can be said the other way. You could then say like, and that's why I think there's always a pivot in life. And yes, so right, because you can take 3 steps forwards and then, you know, a couple of steps back, but something always comes and hits you in the face.
But that's why
in my opinion,
I think any of the wisest people that I've ever been reading about or have ever listened to are the people that are the most accepting of this, of this idea that like at any minute your life can change, and you should never be searching for an end. 100%. That's a really bad way to put it. I'm somebody that likes to have, I don't know where this comes from or why it's important to me, but I'm someone that likes to round everything off.
Yeah.
And have it as like a period of time and then that thing is done.
Yeah.
So for me, mental health is particularly challenging to work on because I'm like, when can I complete this? And
so true.
And it's learning that like that's not a thing, and then it's learning to become okay with that. And even with like anxiety, we've spoken about this a lot before, I definitely typecast myself as an anxiety girl and thought like I will never not be entirely anxious. It's not true. I have loads of phases of my life now where I can actually feel completely fine and I don't feel anxious at all. And then it's learning that when it does come, because it does come back around, it does. It's like, I need to be okay with that. So the ebb and the flow, and I would love to stop seeing people on social media and online talking about reaching these goals and how to maximize your life. I'm so fed up of it. It's a really unhealthy way to think.
I completely agree. And you've actually just made me think about a whole other kind of typecast that I think is going to be a very challenging, what I feel like I'm going to find this very challenging, but also fulfilling part of my life, is this typecast that once a woman has children, that they are, well, obviously, first and foremost, they are a mother, but I feel like there almost becomes this pressure on women to be the perfect mum, I can't speak for men because I'm not a man, be the perfect mum, but I also think there's this idea of being typecast into a box as a mum, and she's kind of lost her way and that's it now, we're all done, career over. And obviously we know thousands and thousands of women that go back to work and smash their careers, but equally there's many women that don't go back to work. But work doesn't just mean that they're just a mum. Like they're allowed, they're allowed to do other things. They're allowed to enjoy other things. And let's not take away the fact that not just being a mum, you may be, helping out in your community. You may be looking after older parents.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like this idea of just being like, perhaps if a woman is not able to go back to work because they need to focus on childcare, like for a lot of people I know that it's actually kind of silly because they're paying for themselves to go back to work with how expensive childcare is in the UK preschool. And then I think that's going to be a very difficult personally transition for me to not put myself in this box of being like, well, now that's it, that's me now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I completely do. And I feel so sad for women that do experience that, because I have heard lots of women talk about this openly, about the real sadness of losing a part of your identity when you become a mum. And actually one of my best friends' sister is an amazing mum to a gorgeous boy. And I remember her saying a few years ago, it's so bizarre because not only am I now a mother in the eyes of everybody, but my body does now not longer feel like it belongs to me.
Yeah.
Because especially when you're in those first year or 2 years or however long you breastfeed for, your body actually really doesn't, it's a vessel to keep someone else alive. Mm-hmm. So you're dealing with the identity crisis of oh God, I've lost a huge part of myself. Because for me and you, my career is a huge part of myself.
Yeah.
And then to not be able to do that or be involved with that, you would feel like you're losing that. And then not only are you suffering with that, your body doesn't feel like yours. I wonder what you feel like in that year. Do you feel invisible? Do you feel lost? Or do you feel whole? Because I think for everyone it's obviously very different.
I think it's really different. And I actually realised when I was thinking about this episode today, how many things I need to actually work through mentally before I have a baby, because it actually made me realize that I have some like internal feelings about how I think my life will be post having a child, because I think I don't know where it's come from, and I'll be really honest, I feel like almost there's this line of my career and then baby, and I'm panicking about it afterwards, as if like I'm going to become this kind of like, I don't know, a person that just can't like focus on my job at all, and it's going to be the end of my career. And I know that's such a stupid thing to say, and people will be like screaming. I'm just saying how I personally feel, and I want to have children, and I know hopefully I can, but it's definitely something I need to work on. Because
but I think that there are loads of people that will be feeling like that as well. And I think it's really good to be honest about this and to say this, because people around you, like me, your family, need to know that you're feeling that, because if it does happen and one day you do fall pregnant, it's so important that we understand that's your anxiety. Yeah. Because you must be able to communicate that that's how you're feeling. Because if you ever did become and felt that you were quite lost after, then it would be terrifying. And equally, if you actually came out and you felt really defined and you felt great about that place, would be amazing for you to share that too. Yeah. So I think being honest, especially around pregnancy and having children, is something that I'm really proud of you for doing, because it's hard, it's really hard to admit these things. It's really hard to be honest with yourself about these kind of emotions, which are scary emotions.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people can relate, and I also think that you change and you adapt as well, and you can come back to things. I also think this idea of being kind of typecast when you're younger is almost being like young and hungry, and you almost like get to a point or an age where you like, society says slow down, or society says don't do that. I actually, our other sister Georgie and I, we went to a Mel Robbins event earlier in the year, and like, say what you will about Mel Robbins, like I know some people, I think she's a bit of a Marmite character, like some people love her, some people find her a bit irritating, but she's completely changed her career and her life and turned it around, and she's in her 50s, and there are many people of any age that maybe pick things up later in life, and I think sometimes you can put your life into boxes and say, no, that's done, I can't do that again, because of maybe age, or maybe because of I see this a lot actually in the gym, and body type, and kind of this idea of like, let's say running. I often see this, I hate this idea that good runners are those that are very slight and light. Yes, if you look at like marathon runners that are famous, obviously like it helps if you're trying to win a fucking marathon if you're like a smaller, but I don't like this idea of like you not being able to do something because you put yourself in a box. Yeah. And it's like, I can't do that because I'm X, or I can't do that, and
so what advice would you give to somebody that is feeling typecast, or is feeling like they have positioned themselves into this box and they're really not sure how they can move away from that?
I think firstly, it's finding like-minded people. We've spoken about this before, about this idea of loneliness not necessarily being a physical feeling, and actually you can be surrounded by many people but feel very lonely, and I think that can be the same with being put in a box. You can be feeling constricted and typecast in your life because perhaps you're surrounding yourself with people that say that's who you are. And also, let's go back to this kind of friends and family idea of almost, because let's say I might think that you think that I'm always I don't know, super organized or annoying. Let's
go with annoying.
Let's go with annoying. Let's say I'm always someone that maybe gets somewhere on time. I'm ridiculously organized. I'm all of these things. But then maybe you're like, oh, Jazz will be good at that because she's X and she's X and she's X. And I might start to feel like this is quite a lot of pressure. Yes. I don't really want to do all of these things anymore. And but equally, Liz thinks I'm that person, so I've got to try and maintain that identity. I think it's firstly communicating. We love that word. We love that. Communicating, but it's also trying to surround yourself or kind of like meet like-minded people that you can then relate to, because we all know that feeling of kind of being boxed in and being like, oh, I don't know if I like it here. I kind of want to pivot. I want to do something else. And I think the the first thing is always research. So it's like, let's say it was when I became a personal trainer is a good example. I started to almost like put the feelers out, let's say. So in my mind, so it's like, oh, maybe I'm going to sign up to that gym and I'm going to start talking to the PTs and I'm going to start being like, how did you get into it? And then you start learning from people. Oh, I used to be I used to work in a doctor's surgery as a receptionist, and actually I decided I didn't really like being in that environment and I really wanted to work with people, but I love health, so I thought it would be. And then you start to learn actually that so many people feel like that and so many people pivot, and it almost makes in your stomach or your kind of your heart be like, oh, okay, it's fine.
It's okay to do that.
Yeah, and I think
okay
if someone's feeling like that, I think actually instead of retracting and kind of going insular, I actually think it's so much more beneficial to try and find other people that have done similar things.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say. And actually one thing I wanted to ask you about being typecast is, have you ever felt this in kind of social situations where almost in friend groups where it's like, I see this a lot with comedians, for example, where like, oh, they're the loud, funny one. And quite often comedians, I've heard interviews with them, let's say, and they actually struggle a lot with anxiety and they've maybe had some... And I see this with friends sometimes where, do you ever have an idea of a friend? Let's say they might be the fun one or the energetic one, and maybe they'll come to a situation and they're not being that person in that situation, and almost it can have like a negative or a positive effect on the group. So a good example might be someone that rarely stays out past 10 o'clock because they like going to bed early. They're not a big drinker. This is kind of an example I can think of. Boys group, let's say they turn up, oh, John's on a mad one. Yeah. That means we're going to have the best night, and the pressure, or flip it on his head, the pressure, John's now like the party guy and he's not feeling it, and the pressure it then puts on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. What was the original question?
Sorry, that's very long-winded. My question was, firstly, do you ever feel like in social situations you might be still typecast into a box? And do you think other people do that to you?
Oh yeah, all the time. I think that I had to really work hard this summer to not be pressured into staying out late or doing like, Liz, come out. We know you love to come out. I was like, I actually really feel like I'm going through a phase of finding going out like horrible.
Yeah. And you have to kind of reconvince people.
Yeah, exactly. And then hopefully I will get a second wind of just being a bit more sociable, but at the moment I'm loving maybe spending time with people a bit more one-on-one, hanging out in smaller groups. I think I'm finding big groups quite overwhelming, but that's not really ever been me. And I think as well, my friend actually messaged me the other day and she'd had a bad day and she said, I need you to make me laugh. And luckily I was in a funny mood and I was like, I know how to make you laugh in this moment. But I thought, oh my God, imagine if I just wasn't in that mood and I just couldn't like deliver that. You'd feel like you let somebody down.
Yeah, it's so much pressure. I've actually just thought about sport as well. And like, let's say if you're someone that like is historically or like good at sports, for example, I feel like that's a lot of pressure sometimes, because even as an adult it's like, you're good at this, you're good at tennis, you're good at, and then that's when you actually ultimately perform your worst, because it's like the pressure of being like, oh fuck, I'm good at this, I've got to be good at like cooking, or there's so many things, and then it's almost like everyone, all eyes on you, you're so good at this. Like I actually recently taught a class, like bearing in mind I've been a fitness instructor for a really long time now. I teach so many classes every week to complete randoms, and I taught a fitness class to like basically a lot of my instructors that work with me, and then I've got like 10 personal trainers in the room looking at me. Oof. And then suddenly I'm shit. I was like, I can't remember anything, I feel like I'm panicking, I would sweating. Hate that. Like that is, and it must be a bit like, I don't know, being an actor and being like, right, we're gonna role play, like just go for it, and then you're like, oh my God, freeze. It's like, yeah. So should we go into our discussion point this week?
Let's do it.
So because we're talking about a fairly niche topic, there's not something, I've not like taken it from the news this week. It was more kind of discussion around typecasting. And I wanted to discuss how you think, or we think, typecasts play out in dating.
Ooh, that's such a good idea.
So let's say like the fuck boy, or like
Okay.
the like
the girl that likes to date like 3 guys a week and whatever.
the quiet one, or like the having a type.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting one because notoriously I've never had a type.
Yeah.
So I think though that I know lots of people that do. For example, and we've actually spoken about this on the podcast before, but I have a friend who just will only go for terrible guys.
Yeah, are they a type?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Well,
But
that
then-
would be like the fuck boy, wouldn't it?
But let's talk about those guys. So how do they feel, or are they going through to each dating situation being like, fuck, I'm that guy that fucks people over?
Yeah, but then I think it's a way to let yourself off the hook if you then do that.
Yeah.
So if you like to kind of like date someone for a bit, and then the minute that you start to get feelings or they get feelings, be like, no, I'm getting rid of this. Maybe it's a way that they're like, yeah, but I'm that guy.
Yeah.
So sorry, we're just talking about guys here. I'm sure it's
There's some girls,
multi-genred
women.
Yeah, I think that it's a way to let yourself off the hook if you then like disappoint someone, or you then end it on unexpected terms because you're like, but that's me, that's what I do. I'm just a dater that just moves on quickly. Whereas I think if you're somebody that's really loyal, maybe not loyal, but you kind of like, you're a one person at a time kind of person, I think then that can also play into it, because let's say you're that person, you only like to do that, and you're dating someone and it's steady and it's going fine, and then you might meet the love of your life.
Yeah.
On a tube when you hold hands and look into each other's eyes. No, and you might, oh my God, that makes me sound so bad.
If you're watching.
Train man.
He's going to write into that on the Metro. Have you ever read I love it so much. Sorry, this is quickly going off topic. On the Metro newspaper, it's my favourite part. I only get it just to read this about, have you ever read it?
Yeah.
About the lonely hearts, like to the woman in the blue jumper on the Northern Line.
It's
amazing. Why have I gone American?
Yeah, but that couple that actually met and fell in love, and so you know how you have like library crushes or work crushes, and then so you can have like tube crushes or train crushes.
Yeah.
And they were on the subway in New York, and the woman said that every day she'd get onto the subway and see this man and go, God, that man is just amazing. Like, he's just so handsome. I'm so in love with him. And she thought it every day. And I think one day he like chased her out of the train and was like, I feel it too.
Oh my God, that's pretty
and
cool.
they've been together
I love
for so
that.
long.
For love, I think that's like, I do think that you can like make things happen if you believe. Like,
if you just believe.
If you believe that that's like the person for you.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But no, I do think that we do this a lot. And I think maybe it's a lot of a Gen Z thing as well, is to typecast people and to say like, you're the fuck boy, I'm this girl, you're this. And I think maybe it does then firstly lead people into bad dating habits.
Yeah.
And maybe a string of quite bad behaviour.
Yeah.
And the other way as well, maybe makes people feel they have to be quite rigid in the way that they date or explore people, when actually, we should put less pressure on people in that way, because calling someone a fuckboy is actually really mean, isn't it?
I know, and I also think it kind of depends on who it is, and clearly those people haven't met the right person yet.
Yeah.
Or they need to do a lot of work on themselves.
Exactly.
I think if you're like, you keep consistently like being the same person in a relationship, it's not them, it really is you.
Yeah.
And that's like a real kind of like eye-opener to maybe trying to do a little bit of work on yourself.
Agreed.
But I also think that, do you not think that sometimes if people haven't perhaps met their person, let's just take anything to do with like misbehaving in a relationship, you could almost put yourself into this box of being a certain person because you're almost like putting up a front, or like, I actually see this play out quite a lot in heterosexual like male women or male female relationships, where sometimes I do think there's this idea that men should be kind of like not vulnerable. They aren't allowed to, and let's say, a long time ago, this was kind of how they should have been. Like, they weren't able to say that they were struggling. There was the pressure to earn the money or be the breadwinner. all of these things, and it's almost like you're kind of living a lie, because it's like you're boxing off a whole part of yourself that you're not able to actually express because you've been told that this is the person you are your whole life.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's interesting with typecasting actually with men, because I think they'd have very different ideas to us. I think that idea of not being able to be that vulnerable, and it's something that I'm loving seeing more of, like, you know, this like more fragile masculinity which exists, and very much as being kind of shone a light on at the moment, which I think is great, and it's a good point. It's a really good point.
I completely agree. Hello, Two Tabs Open podcast. What's your dilemma?
So someone's written in and has basically said that they drive themselves and 2 other people to a hockey training session every week.
Right.
And the person that's written in has found it hard recently because she's realised that the other 2 work together, and they kind of only really talk about work with each other.
Right.
And aside from that, I think she finds their energy a bit draining and a bit negative to be around.
Right.
So, you know, after work, you get a small amount of time to decompress.
Yeah.
And then you have to spend that half an hour decompressing with people that you feel like are draining your energy.
Yeah.
And only talking about work, which in that moment is something that you just want to separate from. I think what she's asking is she wants that car ride back by herself, and she wants to disinvite these 2 people in the car ride.
Right, okay.
How do you go about that?
Is she closer to one of them than the other?
I think she knows one of them more by judging by the dilemma that we were sent.
Right, okay, that's a tricky one. There's 2 ways you could play this.
Yeah.
Number 1, flat out lie.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Flat out lie, your routes changed.
Yeah.
And you have to you get home from work and you realise you actually only have like 5 minutes because your work schedule's changed.
Yeah.
And you actually now don't have time to pick them up. That's number 1. Is lying good or white lies? You know what? We actually need to do an episode on lying, because is it always, you know, is lying ever acceptable?
Yes.
That's one. Yes. White lies are.
In this situation, yes.
Dilemma lies. Yeah, I think it plays into the fact that do you want to? You don't want to upset your friend.
No.
And like that's a really tricky one.
Yeah, it's important to bear that in mind.
I think that's really important. So you could go down the route of lying and telling a little white lie and say, look, I'm really sorry, but my work schedule's changed. It means I now only have like a very quick turnaround, or I don't know, you know, some sort of like easy to believe lie. Or you go down the other route and you speak to the friend who you know a lot better, and you in a nice and kind of like, you know, good way,
appropriate way,
saying, I've actually realised that I don't actually get that much time by myself, and I'm actually starting to find kind of this dynamic quite challenging. Yeah. What do you think?
What I would do, because I think that you can do both of those. I think that you can say to the friend, I'm going to now use that car ride to learn how to speak French, and say that you're going to have like a podcast where you're going to speak French.
Oh, oui, oui.
And she goes, it's just really a bit of me time to pick up something. So she's not really lying.
Yeah.
The language part might be a lie, and it would then backfire if they were ever in a situation where someone spoke French. But I think that this person could tell the truth with a little hint of a lie, because when you could potentially upset someone, it's just not worth it. I feel like as well, do you want the anxiety of being like, look, this is how I feel, but maybe we're just being stupid, and maybe actually the friend would be like, it's honestly fine if you just want like half an hour by yourself. But I think some people could take that quite badly, because they might be like, but I'm not that hard to hang out with.
Yeah.
So I think I would say, be truthful about the fact that you want the time alone, but then lie about why you want the time alone.
Yeah, I also think this is a classic British thing of like saying yes to something. I do this all the time, of saying yes to something when in my mind I'm like, I don't think that's going to be a good idea. Yeah. And then you're in way too deep and you start panicking about it, and then it's like, fuck. Yeah. But actually, on the flip side, if someone then said it to me, if someone said, oh, Jazz, I'm really sorry, I actually just don't think I can take you to hockey training anymore, like, I'd be like, okay, no worries, I'll just find my own way. Yeah. Like, they're adults. So, yeah, I hope that helped.
I hope that helps too. Good luck with that, babe.
Good luck.
Should we move on to our ins and our outs?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, so actually, weirdly that you said about the Bugsy Malone video, because my ins recently have been the Lad Bible short stories.
Yeah.
I literally watch like 2 a week at the moment because I find them so interesting. And I didn't know that Lad Bible had moved on to this more like truth-telling story vibe.
Yeah.
I love listening to stories that are real. So that would be my ins. And also an in, which has been an in my life for a long time, is the Moth podcast.
Oh, yes.
It's so amazing. It's real people telling real stories. It's absolutely fantastic. And my outs this week, this is really random, but my outs is brioche bread. I basically did I did a baking course last Sunday, and we made I had basically brioche bread every day this week for like lunch, dinner and breakfast. And I got to yesterday and I had some brioche left and I was like, I think I'm gonna throw up. Yeah. So I love you brioche bread, but I just need some time apart.
I don't think I love brioche bread, to be honest.
I do like it, but right now I can't think of anything worse.
Do you know what I want to just quickly talk about bread? Because I would say bread is my like number one food source. I think if I could only ever eat one thing for the rest of my life, it would be bread and butter and olive oil and salt. So I do this thing where I put butter on my plate with my bread, and then I also put olive oil. So I do butter, dip it into the olive oil. It's so good. I was actually speaking to Sam about this the other day, about my like ultimate, the best bread I've ever had in my entire life, okay, ever. And I know where it was, okay? And you're going to think, you might even remember this. When we were younger, we were really lucky. Our parents took us on this like insane holiday to America. We did a 2-week road trip in California. It was honestly, I think it's the best holiday I've ever been in my entire life. We were all together.
Pretty cool.
It was just so fun. And we were in the car a lot, and it was kind of exciting because we didn't know where we were stopping sometimes. And it was just honestly insane. Such a great holiday. We basically stopped on the way to Los Angeles at a place called Monterey. Do you remember this?
I do remember.
And Monterey I haven't been there. I've only ever been there once in my life, and it's not got loads of stuff there, but what it does have is one of the most famous aquariums in the entire world. But anyway, when we went there, we were staying there for a couple of nights, and we booked into this hotel, which is actually like on a motorway, like kind of like in the middle of like a roundabout motorway. It was really weird. The hotel was fine, but it was like a slightly odd location. Sorry.
We're never gonna get there.
Stay with me. Stay with me. Anyway, we went to this restaurant in this motorway hotel. I kid you not, I dream about that bread every day. They bring the basket over. It's the best bread I've ever seen in my entire life. Do you remember it?
No.
It was like cheesy, melted, olive oil. I've been to many, many great food places. Top bread I've ever had.
Oh, I'm really happy for you.
Anyway, that's the story.
Yeah,
sorry.
Thanks. That was totally worth it.
If you're ever in California, in Monterey, you've got to go to the Hyatt.
Anyway, what are your ins and your outs?
My ins and my outs. So actually, we're sticking with food. My ins, I know you're not a meat eater, but if anyone lives in South London, I'm not joking, Sam and I get this takeaway once a week. In Balham, there's a kebab place called Pasha Mangal. They do the best kebabs ever, but I often don't get like a traditional wrap kebab. I get like their chicken box, and I always ask for extra chicken. The chicken's insane. Every dip is like very, like it's homemade, but like beautiful. Like last night we got it, and that's why I'm thinking about it. And I just think they're underrated, and they don't get
shout them out again.
Pasha Mangal, Balham, insane. I love you. Maybe you could start sponsoring the podcast.
Please, we can sit here with chicken boxes.
And then my out is a really random one, but because I've been a PT for such a long time now, I obviously only wear mostly gym stuff, but I actually love clothes and I love fashion. And I know like everyone talks about, like you hear these successful people that say like, oh, you should have a uniform. It takes the guessing work out of getting ready, whatever. Yeah. I'm actually done with having a uniform. I actually am fed up of never wearing normal clothes. And obviously I can't wear normal clothes when I'm teaching gym classes. But I've decided to stop, like, when I'm at home on the weekends, wearing a uniform or active wear, and I'm like, no, fuck it, I'm actually gonna start wearing some clothes and like expressing myself creatively rather than wearing black leggings, trainers, the same shit every day.
Well, cheers to that. That's exciting. I can't wait to see some new fits.
No worries.
Pressure's on.
That was a good one.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And we'll be back next week to have a fun little kind of season roundup quiz, what we've been talking about. So yeah, I look forward to that.
Bye.
Bye.